Hello, and welcome to Life Diaries, a space where the pages of life open up, one story at a time. These are tales written by experience, spoken from the heart. Take a moment for yourself, and let's begin. The day lived is left behind when you cross the threshold of the apartment. The door closes. Then the bunch of keys rattles, carelessly thrown onto the stand in the hallway. The coat or jacket takes its usual place on the hanger, which has been there since Jean's grandmother's time. Back then, the family of a young factory worker, blacksmith Walter Smith, consisting of himself, his young wife Lydia, Walter's mother, and their newborn daughter Mary, moved into the brand-new, paint-smelling, concrete and dust-filled affordable housing. Grandpa Walter and Grandma Lydia are long gone. Their daughter Mary has already managed to have 3 children and grow old in the same place, although it's almost the center of a small town. And the 3 living rooms were still impressive. The stairwell smelled of paint. It was dusty, especially in autumn and spring. In summer it was stuffy and hot, in winter cold. Out of the 3 rooms, Jean was constantly only in one, where he had lived since he was very young. The other 2, his grandmother's bedroom and the living room, he preferred not to touch. He didn't change the decor or do repairs. He generally tried to keep the door to the second half of the apartment closed, not to go there, not to listen to its strange sounds. Everything here reminded him of his carefree childhood and youth. His grandmother's room was the furthest. Jean rarely went in there even before. Towards the end of her life, his grandmother completely lost her mind. It seemed she was afraid of war or blockade, neither of which she had lived through herself. But at the head of her bed, there was always a TV box, filled to the brim with supplies of groats, pasta, and sugar. On top, Grandma Lydia always placed feather pillows. She meticulously changed their pillowcases every week. Only after his grandmother's death did it turn out that it wasn't just out of simple cleanliness that she took such care of the pillows. When they were sorting through things and furniture, it turned out that in every sweater, every mattress, and every duvet cover, Grandma Lydia had hidden certain sums of money. It's a shame it wasn't discovered right away. The first 500 rubles were found by the older sister, Ellen, when she was shaking out and gutting the old mattress. With that money, they gave his grandmother a decent funeral and had some left over for the memorial. That's what it means. She provided for herself. The large living room, the room in the center of the apartment, used to be a bedroom, a sitting room, and a dining room. Noisy crowds gathered here. Grandpa's friends, Grandma's friends, uncles and aunts. And then the sisters' boyfriends, husbands, started appearing. Not for long, but even children came. The liveliest parties were held here. Memorial services for unknown relatives and friends took place. New Year and all birthdays were celebrated. Guests slept here. Although the only sleeping places in the living room were sofas and a pull-out armchair, there was enough space for everyone. They slept on the floor, on inflatable mattresses, fitting onto blankets and throws. Jean loved holidays and came, but Grandma Lydia never missed an opportunity to boast about her grandson's achievements to interesting guests whom he liked and who liked him. Little Jean got second place in the school French Olympiad. Jean was given a certificate today for excellent academic performance. Jean finished school with a gold medal. Our little Jean got into law school just like we wanted, and on a scholarship without any tutors. At first, only his grandmother publicly admired Jean. Later, with age, his mother joined in. And when he met Marina... Oh, that Marina. Everything with Marina started here, in this apartment, and it ended here too. He didn't want to remember his beloved grandmother. He no longer liked immersing himself in the world of holidays, her childhood with lots of guests. It was hateful and disgusting. His grandmother, with 3 grades of education, was proud of his every good grade. She didn't understand that these grades weren't for knowledge, but just for his unusual intelligence. Gene was simply a little smarter than an amoeba. He did his homework, he studied a lot. But when his grandmother and mother praised him, like now, he sometimes thought this was connected to his problems at work and in life. No one praises him anymore for completing tasks, for quickly tidying up the house. No one is proud of his simple achievements, which means it becomes unnecessary to perform them. Marina praised him too. She was proud of him at every opportunity. They met in school. Then 2 classes were merged, and Marina became a student in 7th B. She seemed much older, wore a strict school uniform, although it wasn't mandatory. Her hair was always pulled back in a braid or ponytail. Only on rare school holidays did she allow herself a hairstyle with her hair down, held back on both sides with a band or clip. Her strands were always neat. She had a reputation as a bookworm in class, and they didn't like her. But Gene liked her right away. He especially loved her courage and confidence. Marina could argue with the literature teacher for half the lesson. The class would relax during this time, doing their own things. And Gene would listen to how Mrs. Davis lowered grades on another dictation. Thoughts and memories involuntarily visited Gene on particularly sad evenings, when he wasn't very busy with work, or, conversely, was overloaded. Today was just such an evening. Gene brought a pile of documents from work. He needed to read them, sort everything out, and then write the same volume of responses, opinions, and questions. Happy weekends were out of the question. So now, having quickly thrown off his jacket and shoes, Gene dived into the kitchen and pulled out sandwiches from the refrigerator that were left from the morning. He quickly brewed tea and moved to his room, the only one where traces of human presence remained. He didn't want to wake up. His whole body ached. Yesterday he hadn't closed the window, wanting to air out the room, and fell asleep like that. A damp wind, joined by light rain during the night, flew around the room all night. The windowsill was splattered with drops. Some got on the table. Gene wrapped himself in the blanket, then burrowed into the throw as well. He didn't want to sleep, and he had no desire to get up. As soon as you put your feet off the bed, the world would completely engulf you, inevitably. Today he would have to throw the throw onto the sofa, wipe the table and windowsill, make coffee, which he would have to drink even without bread. All supplies were destroyed yesterday after all. That's how every day begins. Between morning and night, he would have to somehow spend the time. Work with documents, go to the store, stare at his phone. Excellent plan, Gene thought. But first the store, and then the documents. He often said his plans out loud. Today he was dressed in casual clothes, only taking down the jeans and hoodie that had been hanging on the drying rack since Monday. He smoothed his overgrown haircut with a comb. Instead of heavy boots, he took sneakers. He slung his backpack over his shoulder and headed towards the store. He felt like taking a walk in the morning. Raindrops kept falling from the sky. But this didn't spoil his overall mood at all. There were few people on the streets, and those who were hurried to hide from the drizzle. It was cool, chilly. But if you put up your hood, you forget about it. It becomes cozy. You immediately feel protected, confident, as if you have conquered the elements. Approximately such thoughts overwhelmed Gene. He liked them. And to stay with them longer, he decided to walk to the shopping pavilion. He had spent most of his life in this city. He left for the capital for 3 years, improving his qualifications. But he couldn't continue working in a cool million-plus city. The huge distances scared him. The large buildings didn't let him breathe. The constant flow of people irritated him. It became unbearable to tolerate. After trying his luck, Gene returned to his hometown, his familiar apartment. He was gladly accepted back at his old job. From this house he had walked to school for 10 years, gone down the sidewalk, crossed the road. Every day he walked past a huge, long building on Pushkin Street. That's when he learned it was a commune house. Gene had seen it in his history textbook. Along the building, almost every day in the morning, old women peddlers sat, selling socks, napkins, mushrooms, and berries from the nearby forest. There were also bundles of firewood, small souvenirs. With each passing year, there were fewer and fewer old women. Then they started being chased away. All this happened before Gene's eyes. A 2-story barracks. Marina used to live here with her mother. At 8:10 in the morning, Gene was already standing under her windows, waiting. Together they would get to school, and then walk back the same way. When they started studying at the institute, both having enrolled in law, they walked the other way, to Communist Square. From there, they took the 17th bus to the final stop, the Institute of Law. Now Gene was also walking to the commune, as everyone local called it. In his 36 years, the road hadn't changed at all, although a few tobacco shops had opened and the entrance to the park had been landscaped. The building remained in place. Further on, a new cafe in a foreign style, a lounge area, a co-working space. And in the same building, the Matriona store from Gene's childhood. The sign was the same, and it seemed the same saleswoman, only older now. Again, an abandoned 1-story building, the former building of the Forestry Academy. The doors here have long been knocked out. There are no windows. It's even hard to tell if a human foot has ever stepped here. In the evenings, groups of young people gather here, who are now being chased away from the renovated stairwells. In winter, homeless people often find shelter here. Many in the city know that the academy used to have its own bunker, and novice diggers or adventure seekers often look around the territory to get into the old shelters through the basement. Gene had been here too. In 10th grade, he asked Marina out on a date. Not to the abandoned building, of course, but to a cafe. He had earned his first serious money then and decided to spend every penny on the girl he loved. That she was the one he loved was not in doubt. But he just couldn't express it eloquently, passionately. Marina always joked it off, saying they were too young to talk about love. And here was such an opportunity. Romance, a cafe. She spent about 3 hours getting ready then, no less. Gene didn't know this. He came to pick her up at the appointed time. Before that, she had driven her mother crazy. What dress to wear? Or better to go in jeans and that top? Marina rattled on, trying on a short blue dress one moment, new school trousers the next. "You don't go on a date in trousers," her mother grumbled. "And you'll freeze in your top. You'll get kidney problems. It's not May outside." With great difficulty, Marina found dark tights, put on a denim skirt, and a fitted wool sweater. Her mother had knitted it. The hair question was solved quickly. But things were worse with makeup. Marina had both lipstick and mascara. Her mother allowed her to wear makeup but didn't know how to teach her. Marina redrew her eyeliner 10 times, then they all decided it was better without it. Then she put on mascara. Her eyelashes became unnaturally long and left marks on her eyelids when she blinked. Marina washed the mascara off. Her lipstick was pale pink, the same color as her skin. She decided to stick with lipstick and foundation. The foundation was too orange, giving her an unhealthy look. None of it was right. Finally, the lipstick. She had to give that up too, because Marina literally ate it off her lips due to nerves. "To hell with this makeup. If you can't do it, don't bother," she whispered to herself and leaned over the sink. She put on regular cream to protect her face from the wind. "You look simply charming today," Gene whispered to her, putting an arm around her shoulders. "Oh, you haven't even seen me with makeup." Marina, as always, joked it off. Gene wanted to kill her for it. Why spoil it? He was trying to make everything beautiful, like in movies, like all girls liked. But that was Marina. They immediately ordered dessert, lingered over it for a long time, and drank tea. Marina talked about her failed attempts to get dressed up, how she drew and washed off eyeliner, how she licked her lips and thickly applied lipstick. Jean listened and couldn't get enough. He wanted to say everything that had been hanging over Jean like a heavy weight of unspoken words for so long. And so they came out, cheerful, happy, heading towards her house. The sky was already overcast, and the rain was falling in large drops, gradually turning into either hail or snow. Expected for November in these latitudes. They almost ran across the square. The academy building had only recently been vacated, and only the most resourceful had already taken a liking to it. And the boys had knocked out the windows with slingshots. Overall, it was a perfect shelter in bad weather. "Let's stand under the roof," Jean suggested, "at least until the hail stops." Marina agreed. They stood in the doorway, watching as large hailstones mixed with drops shattered on the asphalt. A heavy hailstone shattered at Jean's feet. He squeezed Marina's hand tighter and moved closer. This scene could easily inspire a poet or artist. The crumbling brick walls, the empty doorway against the backdrop of the drumming rain. A couple, a boy and a girl, looking at each other. She looks up at him. He leans down towards her face. Just like that, without many words, soaked through, they were always together. "I love you and I'm not going to let you go. And if you laugh again..." He took another breath. "Please laugh. You can joke it off. I want you to hear this and know it always. I need you." He fell silent, either waiting for an answer or thinking about his words. "And I need you too," Marina said with a smile. But her eyes seemed to shine differently, not with a childish smirk, but with a kind of too serious devotion. As if these were the only words she had been waiting for. And they didn't need loud speeches, beautiful dates, bright makeup, or ringing laughter. They just needed to be in the right place at the right time. Snow began to fall, mixing with the mud on the asphalt, but not melting completely. By Marina's house, the kids were already feeling the night frost. The wind changed sharply. Underfoot was an unclear mess, mud from the sides, growing snowdrifts, puddles that hadn't frozen yet. "Want to come in and warm up? I wouldn't mind some tea either." Jean grinned. "And it will all happen. There will be tea, and pastries too. And there will be a shy but such a long kiss. A cold bed with rough white linen. In the morning, it will become the coziest in the world. In the morning, you won't want to get up and remember that you're a school graduate just minutes away, not a hero of a romance novel." All this would happen. Or rather, it did happen. It was now in the past. Jean loves to remember that day and that year. A happy, carefree time. He dreamed that when he and Marina finished school, they could live like a real family. They would definitely move in with him. He would study, and in the evenings, he would work part-time with his uncle. He was an electrician and was already taking on small jobs. And then they would definitely get married. And how happy he, Jean, would be when Marina told him she was pregnant. Quiet family happiness. "Naive fool," he often tells himself now. What happiness for you. What did you do to deserve it? But now he walks and involuntarily remembers that day, that kiss, those plans for life that will never come true. In place of the cafe is now that same shopping pavilion, proudly named Palmyra. Opposite it is a children's hospital and some fast food joint inside a store selling cheap clothes and cosmetics. And on the ground floor is a large supermarket. Jean walked here automatically. He tossed standard groceries into the basket: sausage, bread, kefir. After thinking, he took a bottle of cognac from the shelf. He didn't know yet if he would drink it, but his hand reached for it on its own. And he returned for cheese, a few apples, a pack of cookies, a lemon. He loaded everything into his backpack. The walk back no longer seemed so appealing. He got wet on the way here, and the air conditioning in the store had chilled him. Now the hoodie wasn't cozy, but unpleasant. He wanted to get home quickly. Gene left the store, walking quickly towards home. He found himself on the academy side again. He stepped into a puddle with his sneakers and stopped for a second to shake them off. A knock. Strange, like a hammer on a radiator from the inside. The sound repeated several times, sometimes stronger, sometimes weaker. He went inside the dilapidated building. Here the sound was clearly audible. They were hitting the radiators. But how could you guess where? For a minute, doubts overwhelmed Gene. Should he even go in there? For his own peace of mind, he decided to check anyway. If it was a couple of questionable characters, he would just go on his way. But what if someone was stuck? No one on the first floor. Gene quickly reached the door to the basement. He turned on the flashlight on his phone. For some reason, he shouted, "Hello?" and immediately stopped himself. What kind of hello? You're not lost in the woods. And what should you shout in dark, abandoned basements? Probably, "Is anyone here?" What a stupid thought. If they're knocking, someone's there. "Where are you?" Gene shouted at the top of his lungs now. "Need help?" "Yes!" Suddenly came a thin, barely audible reply. "I'm here." And where is here? Gene thought to himself. Can you give me a location? Out loud, he said, "Talk to me so I know where to go." "I don't know where to go." The same thin voice, barely audible. "My leg hurts. There's a door here, painted with colored paints. There's a devil drawn on it." Gene looked around. Okay, a landmark. There were no doors on the rooms along the walls, so he had to go further down the corridor. Here was the first door. No devil on it, just swear words. Further on, another one. It was locked from the outside. Arrows, dates, signatures on the walls. Adventure seekers had left a reminder of themselves. Further on, a fork in the path. Gene shouted into the darkness again. Should I turn right or left? I don't know. The voice was getting weaker. Towards where you can see light. Left then. He looked for a crack leading outside. A little light came into the corridor. There it was, the door with the devil. Horned, red, with black eyes. It wouldn't be a sin to exhibit such a one in the Hermitage. It turned out very canonical. The door was slightly ajar, so Gene had to lean on it. The room behind the door was empty. There were some pipes along the walls. He looked closer. A figure was lying by the far wall, very small. Okay, I'm here. What happened? Gene said as cheerfully as possible. I'm here and my leg hurts. I fell off a pipe. There's a kitten sitting on the floor. He was just a child, a boy about 6 or 7 years old. Next to him was a backpack, a white shirt, a vest, and trousers. A schoolboy, Gene thought. The child's foot was unnaturally twisted. No need for a fortune teller. A fracture. There was nothing to think about. How did you get here? What's your name? Stevie, the boy said. I went after the kitten. He climbed in here, and I wanted to save him. They say homeless people live here, and I climbed after him. And he went onto the pipe. I wanted to get him down. He jumped. I fell. And my leg got stuck. It hurts now. The boy spoke hastily, disjointedly. His voice trembled. His face was tear-stained and very hurt. Hi, Stevie. And I'm Uncle Gene. I'll help you now. Let me carry you out of here now. Your leg seems to be broken. We'll have to go to the hospital. The boy got scared. Oh, Mom will be upset. Imagine that, Gene thought. He's thinking about his mother, about the kitten, but he didn't react to his broken leg. We'll call a doctor now, and he'll tell us if you need to go to the hospital or not. And Mom, I think, will only be happy that you're okay. Come on, come here." Gene extended his arms to embrace the boy. Gene carefully examined the broken leg, as gently, even as tenderly, as possible. He instantly understood that the situation required immediate intervention. The child was clearly in pain, but he was holding back tears. But Gene's nerves were starting to fray. He barely remembered first aid lessons. He knew that an injured limb shouldn't be disturbed. Just in case, he decided not to touch it at all, so as not to make it worse. He understood that he had to get the boy out of here as quickly as possible. "Uncle Gene, please take the kitten. When I get out of the hospital, I'll definitely persuade Mom to keep him." The boy almost started crying again, so Gene hurried to reassure him. "We'll find your kitten. Where did you see him?" "He's here. He didn't run away, I think. I deliberately closed the door so he wouldn't hide." Gene looked around more carefully. On one of the pipes, the ill-fated kitten was indeed still sitting. Ginger, with drooping ears. He tucked his paws in, covered his tail. His eyes were full of pleasure. Gene stood on one of the pipes and with a light movement, caught the kitten. It didn't resist, calmly went into his arms. "Put him in my backpack so he doesn't run away," the boy reasoned. Gene hugged the child, holding him carefully despite his weight. With each step upwards, he felt a growing sense of responsibility, searching for something in this forgotten place. Just like that, with 2 backpacks on his shoulder, a cat, and a boy, Gene came out into the daylight. From here, he decided not to call an ambulance, but to take the boy straight to the hospital. It was faster on foot. After handing Stevie over to the doctors in the emergency room, Gene left his phone number at the reception and was about to go home. The boy's mother had already been called, and she immediately rushed to her son. Stevie patiently waited for her arrival on a couch right in the corridor. Nurses kept appearing next to him. "Uncle Gene!" the boy shouted. Gene came over and nodded. "Uncle Gene, just tell me where to pick up the kitten. When I get better, I'll come for him right away. My phone number is at the reception. Tell Mom to call me. And will you come visit me? If you want, I'll come." "You must come," Stevie was encouraged. "I'll name him Churchill." "Chubais would be better," Gene grinned, but the child probably didn't understand his strange humor. On top of work, this 4-legged happiness had fallen upon him. Gene loved animals. Before, when his mother and grandmother were still alive, there was a constant parade of cats, puppies, hamsters, and even pigeons in their house. They felt sorry for everyone. They fed them. Gene consciously didn't get pets. He didn't have time to take care of them. And now he had one. Churchill. The kitten slept, ate, ran around. In the evening, Gene sat at the table, buried in his laptop. The kitten settled on his knees and purred. It suddenly felt so warm, so pleasant. Having calmed down, Gene decided that he should visit Stevie after all. Stevie had already been moved to a ward. He was half sitting on the bed, looking at a book. Besides him, there were 3 other boys. One had parents sitting with him. Another had an elderly woman, probably his grandmother. Another boy was packing his things, apparently going home. Stevie's bed was directly opposite the door. Gene took a few steps towards the boy who had been distracted from his book. "Well, hello. How are you feeling?" Gene smiled. "Hello?" The boy beamed. "How's Churchill?" "He's fine, running around everywhere now." "And how are you? Broke your leg?" "Mom says they'll let you go home soon, but you'll have to lie down a lot. She went out to talk to the doctor to get us home sooner. She'll be back soon. And when they let me go home, we'll come for the kitten. Mom already agreed. She was even happy." Stevie spoke just as quickly, trying to say everything in one breath. "Well, how are you doing, little one? Haven't you had time to get bored? Jean heard from behind him and turned around. A woman approached the bed. She leaned her hands on the backrest, looked at her son, and then at Jean. A round, slightly tanned face, thin-rimmed glasses. Dark hair, held back with a clip, fell from her shoulders. She was strictly dressed, a hospital gown over her suit. It wasn't difficult to recognize Marina in this woman. She hadn't changed, only seemed somehow bigger. Perhaps the jacket and gown gave her that appearance, or perhaps her slight stoop had straightened out and her shoulders had broadened. Jean was momentarily flustered, cleared his throat, and asked, "Marina, how are you here? Came to see your son? I didn't expect to see you." "So you're Uncle Jean who saved the kitten. So I guess?" Jean grinned. Marina's tone seemed condescending to him, even friendly. "Mom, do you know Uncle Jean?" Stevie watched what was happening with curiosity. "Yes, he was my classmate. We even went to the same institute." Jean looked at Stevie. "We were friends for a long time, actually." Marina hurried to tell her son that he would be discharged the day after tomorrow and wouldn't be going to school for a while. "I'll go then. I still live in the same place. When you're ready to pick up the kitten, call me. I left my number." "Yes, of course, I'll call." Jean said goodbye to Stevie and Marina again and quickly left the ward. Today had become even stranger. Yesterday, all those adventures with finding the child, saving the kitten. And today, Marina. Could fate have played such a cruel trick? Jean didn't doubt the existence of Providence. He believed that everything was predetermined. But for it to happen like this... He felt a mix of emotions. Happy to see Marina, but at the same time sickened, because he realized he hadn't seen her for many years. He couldn't help but remember those happy times when they spent so much time together, laughed, did silly things, and supported each other. Jean daydreamed on the way home, thinking the meeting would be the start of a new close connection between them. But at the same time, he understood that too much had changed, and perhaps it was no longer possible to return to what they had before. Remembering Marina, he smiled and felt a surge of warmth and nostalgia. They were both so young and full of hopes and dreams for the future. They enrolled in law school simply because they both got in. Back then, they thought there was nothing better than constantly being together, studying and coming home at the same time, preparing for tests together, taking exams. And that's how it was for the first 6 months. After the first semester, long weekends began. It had been freezing outside for several days, and the weather wasn't going to improve. They had to spend all their time indoors. His mother was still living in the apartment then too. Although she didn't interfere with the young couple, they met too rarely. They quickly left for school or the cinema. Now the constant presence of people in the apartment started to irritate Marina. Living together didn't seem so fun to her. Responsibilities suddenly fell on her. Although her mother cooked for the whole family, Marina, out of politeness and a desire to learn, also cooked something interesting, trying out recipes from large cookbooks. It always turned out differently. Some dishes were successful, others could be safely thrown away without even tasting them. At school, she could eat in the canteen, or eat what she brought with her. Now Marina felt some pressure from her boyfriend. He didn't directly tell her to clean, but his behavior showed that he expected it from her. And the girl tried her best to meet expectations. And so time went on. Studying was replaced by the room by the kitchen. There was nothing fun or romantic about this life together. Nothing that Jean had promised himself and her. Sometimes she thought that this was what love was like. Practical, without excessive tenderness. Everything a self-sufficient woman would want. Relationships without excessive passion and romance, without scandals and long arguments. Everyone just had duties and obligations. The main thing was to do everything by the rules. Then there would be happiness. At other times, the thought occurred to her that Jean was simply taking advantage of her. Notes for him, sometimes she wrote them. And what did he give her? Sometimes gifts on very rare holidays. There were times when he forgot to congratulate her. With each passing day, these thoughts grew stronger. But they continued to live together. Marina also kept things tidy, cooked. There were also thoughts that this was how it would be now, perhaps for her whole life. Marina would continue to submit to duties and live without love and passion. She followed the rules and accepted her fate. But in her soul, she felt emptiness and dissatisfaction. She dreamed of more, of real love and a sense of happiness. She continued to endure all her thoughts and doubts, for that was her reality. She, Marina, an excellent student, a beauty, you could say. She had so many ambitions: to study law, become a prosecutor, wear a blue uniform suit, and handle court cases. She wanted to go to work from 8 to 6, 5 days a week. Come home, sink into a large armchair with a throw, taking off her high-heeled shoes on the way, feeling her legs relax. She would throw the throw over her knees, pick up a book, or turn on the TV. She would cook what she wanted or order food delivery. She would brew tea, drink it slowly, looking out the window, having changed into soft home pajamas. A huge bed. Marina dreamed of a large bed with a carved headboard and a canopy, like a princess. She would fall asleep and in the morning go back to work. Marina's weekends would be just as measured. Walks in the fresh air, then dropping into a couple of shops. She would buy herself puzzles or embroidery to occupy her evenings. Just a dream vacation. And in the summer, she would go to the sea. Living far in the north, she didn't know what the sea was like until she was 20, but she longed to go there. Her grandmother, who used to live by the sea, the Baltic one, a cold one, told her about it. It raged, it was boundless, it attracted, it inhabited. Marina dreamed of the sea. Jean suddenly invited her during the summer holidays after their first year. They had a whole free month after exams and practical training. Marina agreed, but it turned out to be quite expensive. But they went in the upper berths of an old third-class carriage with huge backpacks. They took everything they could so they wouldn't have to buy things there, wouldn't have to spend money. They stayed there for 5 days. They lived in a tent between a sanatorium and a wild beach. Every day they went swimming. Once they climbed a mountain. They had a boring holiday. But for Marina, it was magical. She didn't want to be anywhere but by the sea. To lie, sunbathe, swim. They didn't argue there. They didn't share anything. They just enjoyed their holiday as much as they could. And after that trip, Marina knew for sure she would go to the sea every year, with money. She wanted to drink coffee in a seaside cafe, eat all those southern fruits, go on some excursion. They went to the sea again during the holidays. Then they could afford an inexpensive hotel and coffee by the sea. Jean did fulfill her dream, showing her the sea in all its glory for the first time. Jean returned to the apartment, puzzled. Old feelings didn't just stir. Maybe to St. Petersburg or Moscow, or maybe south to the sea. Something incredible had happened today. She was here. She had a son. He went to school here. So, she had been in the city all this time. In such a small town, he had never met her. If it hadn't been for yesterday's incident, he would never have known. He reasoned this way, sometimes out loud, sometimes in his head. Well, she's here. What now? Will you run to declare your love? Say you were wrong, that you were a complete fool? She probably has a husband too. Do you think she'll forgive you now, throw herself into your arms, cry with happiness, and you'll live happily ever after? Why didn't she rush to you in the ward if she missed you? And why didn't you rush to her? You could have at least said, "Hello." What will you do now? The doorbell pulled him out of his thoughts and reasoning. Gene flinched. He put out and then threw away his cigarette. Could it be Marina? Yes, she was standing on the doorstep with her umbrella open. So serious and businesslike. She didn't fit into the decor of this apartment. She was too young for it, too. Now she wore high-heeled boots. Before, her mother wouldn't let her, so she wouldn't seem short next to her daughter. Now, black patent leather boots added another 10 centimeters to her height, lengthening her legs in narrow trousers. A narrow-fitted burgundy raincoat gleamed with raindrops. A scarf. She never used to wear hats, saying her face was too round and she looked like a mushroom. But now she had found a solution. An elegant beret. Gene stared at her for an impolitely long time. He didn't immediately remember that he should invite his guest into the apartment. Coming in? He invited her with a gesture. I came to say thank you. Marina stepped over the threshold of the apartment. Gene saw a painfully familiar scene. Here she was, Marina. Just like before, she first took off her raincoat, then her beret, shook off invisible dust specks, adjusted her trousers, put down her bag. I'm so glad you were there. Stevie is such a handful. She paused. He climbed into the basement, wanted to save a kitten, he says. As if hearing he was being discussed, the ginger culprit darted out to the people. Marina felt a little relieved. Here it was, the reason to come here and have this awkward conversation. Who's this handsome fellow? She said to the animal. Isn't he beautiful? She said this to Gene. Yes, he's cute. Tea? Let's have tea since I'm here. Gene got out the cups, filled the kettle with water. It was awkward to do all this in silence. How's Stevie? He asked to break the ice. Nothing serious? No, thankfully, everything turned out okay. It saved him that you were there. You never know who else hangs out in that dump. Marina grimaced with disgust. Oh, come on. No one would have just walked past. Gene waved it off. I was very surprised to see you in the ward. I thought you'd been gone from this city for a long time. I left. I lived by the sea for about 3 years, working shifts there. And then my mother died. I came back, started dealing with the apartment here. Stevie grew up. I sent him to kindergarten here, and now to school. Do you have green tea? Yes, I remember you like it. I have some. It's strange that I never met you. Everyone's in plain sight here. And I'm not a lawyer. What would I do without the paperwork? Marina grinned. I'm studying part-time to be a primary school teacher. Back then, in the past, the young couple moved out. They thought everything was ahead of them, that only days of boundless pleasure awaited them. They knew for sure that it wouldn't be like everyone else. The only mistake was that everyone thinks that, and everyone ends up the same way. I want freedom, he said once. I can't stand to see these walls anymore. Let's at least do some renovations. All you want is fun. What about me? Pay for everything, haul bags, and spend a ton of free time on it. I'm already working and studying too. And what is there to renovate here? Nothing seems to be broken. I'd at least wallpaper our room to make it look fresher. These gray stripes with flowers are giving me nightmares. The flowers are fine, and you won't be able to wallpaper properly anyway. Marina became withdrawn. It seemed like a small thing, but why did such small things happen every time? One moment someone was saying she couldn't wallpaper properly, the next she oversalted the soup, or overcooked the cutlet. A fool won't understand, Marina repeated to herself in such situations. Who was Gene then? He said it as if he had caught her doing something terrible, some mortal sin. Gene's mother loved Marina, often took her side if she heard the young couple arguing. But it didn't seem promising. An adult woman scolding her son for a wrongly spoken word. She remained his mother no matter what. He was her own flesh and blood. When she moved to the dacha, it got even worse. Marina used to find at least imaginary protection, could smooth over conflicts. But here there was nowhere to go. They were alone together in a large apartment, alone with their problems. They had to build their family life themselves. It changed. Every day Marina heard that she couldn't do some small thing right. Each time she became more upset. The man she loved pointed out all the flaws he saw right to her face. Sometimes even out of context, just in passing. She wanted to tell him the happy news right after school. Today Marina stayed home. She didn't go to classes. Her health was failing. She had a fever in the morning, and nausea bothered her all day. Marina had found out what caused it a couple of days ago. Due to feeling unwell, she went to the clinic, and they immediately sent her for an ultrasound. And there, on the picture, was a 4-week-old fetus. A completely indistinguishable blob on the screen for Marina clearly proved that her discomfort would last for a long time. She didn't tell Jean right away. There wasn't a suitable moment. He was staying late at work, wanting to get as much done as possible, looking for materials to supplement his thesis. And today he was supposed to come right after classes. His mood was clearly not conducive. He got under the blanket. While the intro played, Marina asked, "Do you think we'll have beautiful children?" "Probably not. And I think they'll be pretty good. Do you want a boy or a girl?" "I don't want anyone. What are these stupid questions? I don't want to discuss this. We're at least 10 years away from children if we don't break up. Let's watch the movie." And they watched the movie. The idea of telling him about the child didn't occur to Marina again. But another one did. In the morning, they woke up as usual. Marina went to the kitchen, made French toast, brewed tea. Jean started getting ready for the institute, and then for work. "Are you going to classes today?" he asked. "No, I'll go to the clinic today, get a sick note. I still have a slight fever. I'll be home around 7 today. Call me if anything." And they said goodbye at the door as usual. Marina closed the door, went to the room. She changed clothes, took a black travel bag out of the sofa drawer. At the bottom, she put 2 jackets, several pairs of trousers, sweaters, and 2 shirts. She packed a small handbag, took cosmetics from the bathroom, a few bottles of her perfume. From her jewelry box, she took out her few pieces of jewelry: a ring, a silver pendant, a bracelet, and earrings. Her father had given her the ring shortly before he died. It was a little too small now, so it hung on a chain. Marina sometimes wore it around her neck. Jean had given her the pendant and earrings right after they started living together. The bracelet was from Jean's mother, a talisman with a zodiac sign. She twirled the jewelry in her hands. Marina put on the chain with the ring, put the rest back in the jewelry box, and returned it to its place. She sat down on the bed, took out her phone. She scrolled down to the contact, Jean. He was still saved as Jean. She never wanted to save him as darling or sweetheart. Even more annoying were the cliché bunny, kitten. She pressed delete. The contact flew into the trash, and the trash was immediately emptied. Marina stood up, exhaled, and left the apartment with her bag. That same day, she submitted her application to withdraw. Just like that, 6 months before graduating from the institute, for personal reasons. They promised to send the documents by mail to her place of residence, but whose address was unclear. Marina had gone home before the institute, left her bag with her mother. Her mother wasn't home, and that was good. Her mother wouldn't have understood everything that was happening. In time, of course, everything would have worked out for them, and her mother would definitely have helped with the child. But Marina was ashamed that she had chosen the wrong man, that she had gotten pregnant so irresponsibly, that she couldn't tell him about it. She drew conclusions. She bought a ticket to St. Petersburg at the station, Then from there, she went south. Now everything was behind her, except her own feelings. Marina came back again 2 days later. Jean had already come home from work, fed the cat. And then suddenly the intercom rang. She was alone, feeling anxious. "I came for the cat." They put the kitten in a carrier. She was about to leave. "I wanted to thank you again for Stevie. You saved the most precious thing I have. Is there anything I can do for you?" "I already said, it's fine. But if you want, can I ask you a favor?" "Anything." "Let's meet again on the weekend. Somewhere in a cafe or go for a walk." Jean spoke with pauses, but confidently. Marina pressed her lips together, quickly turned away. "Okay, we'll meet. I'll call you. I need to see when I'm free." Jean locked the door behind her. It didn't feel easier, as he had expected. On the contrary, something in his soul felt heavier. It was as if a lump of air had risen to his throat, making it difficult to breathe. For several days, Jean was not himself. He thought about what he would say to Marina. At first, he knew exactly. He would ask why she left, why she didn't answer her phone, where she lived. But the closer the meeting got, the stronger the thought became. What would that information give him? And then what? He would learn the reasons. But could he fix anything? And did he even want to fix it? His thoughts became more and more muddled. The clear plan for the meeting got lost against the backdrop of reflections and uncertainty. Finally, he decided, whatever happens, happens. He just wanted to see Marina again. "You know, I didn't believe you'd come until the last minute." He smiled when Marina got out of the taxi. "I promised, and I didn't really have any other plans. I wanted to invite you for a walk in the park, and maybe go for dinner afterwards. There's a wonderful new cafe in the square." "That's a good idea. The weather's perfect for walks today. The last autumn days without gray skies and rain. It might even start soon." Jean offered his arm, inviting Marina to walk towards the park. The weather had indeed been good for a couple of days, no rain falling. Sometimes the bright but already cold sun peeked through. Leaden clouds sometimes covered it, sometimes disappeared completely. There were a lot of people around. All the city dwellers wanted to catch the last fine days. Marina and Jean walked arm in arm. He used to dislike walking like that, but Marina really liked it. Now he suggested it himself. They discussed the weather, the large number of people, which slightly irritated both of them. They walked along the embankment of a small river. The main attraction of the park was the bridge over it. Here, newlyweds and lovers left ribbons and locks with their names, sealing their love. Jean noticed a brand new shining lock with Eugene and Marina on it. "Look," he said. "It seems like a good sign, finding our names." "Oh, really? What a coincidence." Marina exhaled. "Why did you leave?" Jean finally decided to ask the question that bothered him the most. He knew he had to ask. "I got pregnant," Marina began. "What?" Jean interrupted. "What do you mean? Stevie?" "No, how old is he?" "No, that didn't work out," Marina quickly said. "Stevie was born later. After I left, so much happened." "Tell me, I want to know. Was I to blame?" "I was to blame. I took my documents and went to Anapa. I had a little money. I rented a room in a dorm there. A guy lived next door. He helped me around the house sometimes, helped me find work. And at 26 weeks, I had a miscarriage, due to stress. I got into debt then, only worked at a loss. Sometimes I couldn't even pay for the room. That's when I was completely broken. And this guy, Max, invited me to live with him, asked me to marry him. So I agreed. Stevie was born. We lived normally. He didn't hurt me, told me to go study part-time. There was always money. Max worked as hard as he could. And what happened now? And then we broke up. Peacefully, calmly. He said he was madly in love, and I never really adored him. He didn't abandon his son, promised to help. So, peacefully. And then such news. Mom died. And I thought that was a reason to come back here. Jean was silent, and Marina said nothing. They stood leaning on the bridge railing. Jean looked at the names on the locks. He wondered how many of them were still together. He remembered how they once went on an excursion. They had to climb a mountain for almost a kilometer to visit a wishing cave. The weather was awful then. They didn't want to go anywhere. But the excursion was scheduled, so in the morning they went to the bus stop. They drove on a wet road, then climbed an untrodden path. So in the cave, Jean had only one wish: to get back to the room with the heater and hot tea as soon as possible. "Remember we went to the wishing cave?" he asked. "Of course, we froze so much I'll remember it my whole life." Marina smiled. "Did you make a wish?" "Yes. And you?" "I wished to get home quickly. I was frozen stiff as a board then." "Well, imagine that. It came true right away. Remember, we canceled half the route because of the fog then? We didn't cross the ridge, went straight home after the wishes." "Yes, I didn't put that together then. I was more happy that I wouldn't have to freeze." "And what did you wish for? Did it come true?" "It definitely didn't come true right away. I've always had only one wish. And maybe it will still come true." "What is it?" "If I tell you, it definitely won't come true." Jean smiled. The conversation, which had been a heavy life story, suddenly shifted to a normal, friendly tone. The familiar, cheerful Marina with her funny superstitions. She joked, talked about Stevie, about the kitten, that Stevie wouldn't leave him. They had dinner at the cafe. All the time they discussed what had happened to each of them during that time. The conversation flowed as if there hadn't been 4 years of living together. Such a difficult breakup. A long separation. As if one of them had gone on vacation and now returned and was sharing impressions. "Coming in?" Jean asked when they were walking past the abandoned academy. "Do you think that's a good idea?" "I know it's a good idea. I lost you once because of my own foolishness. Don't think this is the right time. And I think, on the contrary, we missed the right time a long time ago." She traveled on the train for a long time. She had very little money with her, everything she had managed to earn. The direction wasn't very clear. Before, she had only been to southern cities as a tourist, and St. Petersburg was something incomprehensibly mysterious to her. She had thought before about what she would do if she had to live in such a big city. The first horror seemed to be the distances. In the city she was leaving, you could cover the longest bus route in an hour and a half. The thought that you could spend an hour getting to work on the fastest transport didn't fit into her head. The second horror was the number of people. She would get a job, and there would be a 25-story building, and hundreds of people on each floor. How could you remember everyone? The mysterious crisscrossed courtyards, the noisy avenues scared her. No, Marina definitely didn't want to go to the capital. That hustle and bustle didn't attract her. But she liked the summer excitement of Primori. There were also a lot of people there, but they all seemed down to earth, like her own. As if everyone knew your name, and would come right up and say hello. There was always life there. There were always people, one group replacing another. It was to this very coast that Marina was going. She arrived early in the morning. She immediately went to look for housing. There was an advertisement on an old, dilapidated building. Room for rent. This building was built back in Soviet times for specialists of some factory. Marina even participated in the construction from the factory. No one ever got the apartments, but the former workers remained after the collapse of the Union, each with their own small room. It was a corridor-type building. On both sides of the entrance were doors to apartments. Some were studios. People were lucky. They got a finished apartment as property. Marina had a standard 2-room apartment, but each room had its own owner. The kitchen and bathroom were shared. There were also 3- and 4-room apartments. The system was the same there. Living in a 2-room apartment was quite convenient. The neighbor, Max, was a young guy. The room belonged to his mother. When she died, he stayed. He paid attention, helped her carry out the old sofa and assemble a new one, did repairs in the apartment, fixing the electricity or changing a faucet. He had to do this very often. The building was built in a hurry. The materials weren't the best. Pipes burst repeatedly. One New Year, Marina and Max celebrated in jackets and by candlelight. Not because it was romantic, but because the power was also out in the whole area due to an accident. Marina moved in and slowly started making the little room her own. The landlady, a very kind woman, left the girl all the appliances, old towels, and even a set of new bed linen. And Marina started living alone for the first time in her life, without anyone's help. She wanted to get a job, but when they found out about her condition, they politely refused. She went for temporary part-time work as a salesperson. The work was hard, the pay was low, but it was paid on time, and it was enough for her. The only thing that scared her was the thought of the upcoming birth. No one would give her maternity leave. She would have to wait for the allowance until it reached the living wage. That allowance. With each passing day, this thought became clearer in Marina's mind. That day, she came home from work, especially exhausted. She had been carrying boxes from the warehouse, running up and down stairs. Without changing, she collapsed onto the bed. She wanted to close her eyes and pass out right away, but she felt a strong heaviness in her lower abdomen. Everything was pulling and aching. She was very thirsty. Marina tried to get up, to go to the kitchen for water, but the movement suddenly echoed with sharp pain throughout her body. She got to her feet, opened the door, and took a step into the common corridor. Max caught her by the arms halfway to the kitchen. She didn't even notice that she was screaming in pain. He was the one who called the ambulance. He was the one who met her from the hospital and was with her every day, saying that what had happened wasn't a death sentence, that she needed to live on. And she did. Not with him, but just nearby. Max stayed overnight more and more often, and then they combined their apartments altogether. So much happened during that time, good and bad. Marina bounced between part-time jobs, sometimes a salesperson, sometimes an administrator in a cafe. Marina perceived the news of her pregnancy as a miracle. Although no one talked about traumatic consequences, the thought that she might not be able to give birth again sometimes came over Marina. Stevie was born a strong boy. As soon as he learned to talk, he reasoned like an adult. He calmly accepted the news that Mom and Dad wouldn't live together. He only asked Max, "You'll still love me, won't you? Maybe even more? And I'll pick you up for holidays." She was in this apartment again. Everything here was as it used to be. Everything was as she remembered it. But something had changed nonetheless. Outwardly, it was imperceptible, but stepping over the threshold, she immediately felt it. It had become empty here. Too much free space. Everything was so uninhabited. There was no human warmth in this apartment. The dark corridor, the kitchen, also a dark room. The windows here always blocked out the light. The light that Jean turned on here every evening was a pathetic imitation, a parody of the sun. And then she came. She stepped onto this floor again, and circles of warmth and sunlight seemed to spread from her. The hanger where her raincoat hung, the shelf where her boots stood, were illuminated. She walked down the corridor, and a trail was left behind her, as if a sunbeam followed her everywhere. Jean let her go first, and himself fell under these almost magical charms. He was captivated by how she managed to fill these stuffy corners with air, how she managed to touch things and immediately fill them with life. She picked up a cup of tea, and its aroma spread throughout the kitchen. as if she was dispersing it with her breath. Her cup clinked against the saucer, but she continued to hold the thin handle. Jean touched her fingers with the back of his hand, took her hand, and brought it to his lips. She smelled of something sweet. Cream, probably. And she also smelled of cold, steam from the tea, the fading autumn. She was so beautiful now. The abandoned apartment had become so bright. Marina went into the room, walked to the table, and leaned her palms on it. She looked out the window, thinking about something. It was getting dark outside, the wind was cold, rain had started, and behind her was Jean. He quietly came up close and put his arms around her shoulders. So quietly, as if afraid to scare her away, or trying to remember every second of this. Before she turned around, he managed to say, "I'm sorry." In the morning, she left. She had her own home, a child to take care of, a job, and now a cat too. Now no one held anyone back, no one begged them to stay for long. They didn't linger in bed, postponing the last morning minutes. He didn't ask when they could meet again, if a meeting was even possible. He walked her to the door, put her in a taxi. He himself needed to collect his thoughts, finish the work left over for the weekend. How tired he was of this aching feeling of uniformity in the apartment. After she left, everything became dark again. On the things, some smell of her hands still lingered, and it seemed particles of the light that had streamed after her yesterday. But the rest was just as gloomy and empty. A cold, empty apartment. Jean opened a real estate website called Some Agency. "I want to sell my apartment. 3 rooms, center location, 72 square meters. The building is old, but not scheduled for demolition. No repairs. I want to sell it as soon as possible." The girl on the other end of the line said something about a discount, about how the apartment could be sold faster by paying for promotion. They agreed on noon. An agent came, with a couple of other people. They wrote something in a notebook, then on their phones. They signed documents, took an advance payment for the work, and left. And Jean himself didn't believe he was doing this. But he knew. If he hesitated now, he might miss everything again. A family was found after 2 weeks. They came to see the apartment, asked why there was such a discount, why it was being sold urgently, and, having made sure the building wasn't collapsing, they agreed to buy it. He called Marina the next day and arranged to meet in the same cafe in the evening. "Please come. There might not be another chance." Only later did he think he might have seriously scared her with those words. Who knows what she might think? But on the other hand, he said exactly the right thing. There might not be another chance. He worried for nothing. Marina didn't look alarmed by his state, but she did come to the meeting. "I'm selling the apartment. I want to move far away from here, maybe south." "You decided this so quickly? Why suddenly?" "So I don't change my mind. I want to break out of this vicious cycle. I want you to come with me. Don't refuse right away. I know it might sound strange. It's just that we met now. Everything happened so suddenly. What is this if not a second chance for both of us? We can still start over. We can still build what didn't happen." "Jean, do you understand that this isn't a one-day decision? Work, school. I have an apartment here too. I already uprooted myself once like this, and everything brought me back. I'm asking you to think about it. I'm asking you very seriously. I can guarantee you won't regret this decision. I can swear on my knees." Such big words. Swear. Guarantee. But we're not 15 anymore, remember? And I didn't promise you anything at 15, but now I can. When I saw you again, it was as if dust fell out of my eyes. Do you understand? I saw the world, the apartment, the old job, this. I thought, okay, I'll start a new life. But I realized I can't do it without you. It will stay the same, no matter where I go. I'm glad we met, and I don't regret anything, but I can't make such a decision right away either. They left the cafe in silence. Together. They agreed that Marina would think it over and call him when she decided. She gently brushed me off, he thought. She'll call in a week, apologize, cite work or school, stress for the child. And you, Eugene Miller, will continue to exist with a sense of duty fulfilled, sometimes remembering how you messed up again. But his reasoning was wrong. They were already walking past his house. At the turn into the courtyard, she stopped. I want to leave with you. I really do. We have to try. Otherwise, neither of us will forgive ourselves. Summer this year was very early. Spring passed quickly. There were no prolonged rains. There was almost no winter either. In all 3 months, Marina didn't even wear her winter coat, managing with a windbreaker. They had to turn on the air conditioning. The house heated up so much that it was unbearable to be inside even at night. Their house was large, but cozy. On the first floor were the living room, kitchen dining room, and children's room. The living room was furnished with soft armchairs and a small sofa. It was always cozy and bright here. A modern kitchen for quick cooking, not wasting time. In the dining room, the walls were paneled with wood, and the windows opened directly onto the terrace. The terrace was good for relaxing in spring or early autumn. In summer, it was a bit hot here, but comfortable at night. This was their family's favorite spot. Jean worked here in the evenings. Marina would come to him if he stayed up late. She would sit next to him on the small sofa. From the terrace, you could see the clearing near the house, the nearest woods. Their house was on a hill. The light from the lanterns below allowed them to see a piece of the sea. They didn't go to the sea here. It was for tourists. From April to November, it was always crowded, the bay always dirty. They drove about 50 kilometers from the house to a guest house. They rested there not only from work and household chores, but also from tourists and neighbors. Jean took 2 days off. They decided to spend the weekend on vacation. Jean knew a beach where there were rarely any tourists. But the sea was shallow, without sudden drops. The water was clean. Stevie was always happy about joint trips on vacation. He stayed in the sea longer than he should have. And upon returning from the beach, Jean would buy him ice cream or cotton candy. They walked in the seaside parks, along the embankments. In the evening, they went to local markets. Now he and Marina were lying on towels. Stevie was splashing by the shore. I wish to spend the rest of my life with you, Marina suddenly said. Every year and on every birthday. Why did you decide to tell me now? Jean smiled slightly. It came true. I can now.